that time, isn't it? Hope you've had a good day. It's been a beauty, hasn't it? Good to see you tonight. Glad you made it safely. The book of Proverbs is on the agenda tonight, the first 4 chapters. Any idea how many Proverbs Solomon wrote? These are the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. Identifies the author, doesn't it? According to 1 Kings 4:32, he spake 3,000 proverbs. You might make a note of that. And 1 Kings chapter 10 and verse 23 records, so King Solomon exceeded all the kings of the earth for riches and for wisdom. These proverbs are wise sayings about practical living. The book teaches daily life values, and its keynote is what? Wisdom. Wisdom, the book of wisdom. If somebody said, would you open your Bible to the book of wisdom? You'd turn to the book of Proverbs, wouldn't you? You remember the wisdom of Solomon? There's a little statement in 1 Kings chapter 4, 29 through 34. You might make a little note of. God gave Solomon wisdom and understanding, exceeding much, and largeness of heart, even as the sand that is on the seashore. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? That's a lot of wisdom, isn't it? Yes, sir. 4:29 through 34. You know, the Bible often uses the expression, the sand that is on the seashore. And it uses that in reference to Solomon's wisdom. Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the children of the east country and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan, the Ezrahite, and Heman, and Chalcol, and Darda, the sons of Mahol. And his fame was in all nations round about. And he spake 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. And he spake of trees, from the cedar tree that is in Lebanon, even under the hyssop that springeth out of the wall. He spake also of beasts, and of fowl, and of creeping things, and of fishes. And there came of all people to hear the wisdom of Solomon, from all kings of the earth which had heard of his wisdom. Remember who it was that came to prove him? Queen of Sheba. Hard questions. And she said, what? The half has not been told. The half has not been told. What's the purpose of the Proverbs? Why did Solomon write these? He gave several reasons, didn't he? About 6 of them, right? What's one of them? That was the first one, wasn't it? You might put like a 1 or 2, 3 by each of these. First of all, verse 2, to know wisdom and instruction. Next. Yes, to perceive the words of understanding. Wisdom and instruction can be known. Understanding can be perceived. What's next? To receive. Receive what? The instruction of wisdom. To know, to perceive, to receive the instruction of wisdom, justice and judgment and equity. Those are 4 key words there. We need wise instruction. We need instruction when it comes to justice and judgment and equity. What's next reason? To give subtlety. Is that how you say that? Subtlety? No, it's subtlety. Subtlety. Prudence. That's a good definition. If you wondered what subtlety is. Prudence. To give you prudence. You want to be prudent? That's one reason Solomon wrote the Proverbs. Subtlety or prudence to who? The simple. The simple. To the young man. Knowledge and discretion. Yes. It's a good book for young people to read and to study, isn't it? It's directed toward young people. To give the young man knowledge and discretion or advisement. And so when you look at that, its purpose is sixfold, isn't it? He starts out with the identity of the author and stating his purpose. A good way to start a book like this, isn't it? Who wrote it and what is its purpose? What will a wise man do? Yes. Wise people are those who hear. A wise man will hear. The Bible puts a lot of emphasis on hearing, doesn't it? Jesus said, he that hath ears to hear, let him what? Let him hear. How many ears do you have? And mouths or tongues? What do you think about that? You think the Lord maybe intended for us to do more? For some, that'd be a lot of listening, wouldn't it? Because they do a lot of talking. But listen twice as much as you talk. Listen more and speak less. Speech is silver, somebody said. Silence is golden. You might think about that. Okay. A wise man will hear. What does that mean, to hear? Just to listen? Let it go in one ear and out the other? I heard what you said, but application of it would be involved with that, wouldn't it? To do what you've heard. Not just to have heard it and to forget about it. We, like James, talked about the blessed man in James 1. The man that hears and does. Not the fellow that looks in the mirror and goes his way and forgets what he saw. But to make application. The wise man will hear. Remember the wise man the Lord told about in the mountain sermon? He likened him to a fellow that built his house where? On the rock. And the rains came, the winds blew, and floods, and his house stood. Because it was built upon a solid foundation. That represents the man who hears and does. And will increase learning. Have you learned so much you don't have anything else to learn? Somebody may get to a point they think, I've already learned it all. In fact, the more you learn, the more you realize what? The less you know and the more there is to know and to learn. You never get to a point where you've learned everything there is to learn. And so you can increase learning. You don't graduate from learning. You got to try to learn something new every once in a while, as often as you can. Especially when it comes to spiritual learning. Increase learning. And he talked about a man of understanding shall attain unto wise counsels. To understand a proverb and the interpretation, the words of the wise and their dark sayings. Goes along with the purpose of the Proverbs. What is the beginning of knowledge? Where does it start? The fear of the Lord. The fear of the Lord. Makes for a good study to just look at what the Bible says about the fear of the Lord. It's the beginning of knowledge, or the beginning of wisdom, he'll say in another place. It's the starting point. To develop fear of the Lord. That is respect for the Lord. To reverence him. To stand in awe of him. Be afraid of displeasing him. Be motivated to do what he says. What about fools? They despise. What does that mean? They despise. Look down upon. They don't regard. They don't look upon this as important. They despise wisdom and instruction. They don't want to know. Don't want to learn. Don't tell me. And so introduced to us in the first chapter, the very first few verses, are two groups of people that are going to appear repeatedly throughout this book. Who are they? The wise and the fools. They're to be contrasted. You could take your sheet of paper as you read the book. On one side, put wise, a wise man. And on the other side, put fools. And just put you a list of characteristics of each. Be a good way to study this book, to contrast the two. And we want to be wise in the Lord's eyes, and so we're going to apply our hearts to the wise side, the wisdom. And those things that would characterize a fool are going to have anything to do with that. We might like to think of ourselves as wise, but are we wise according to the Lord in his eyes? Would he assess us, evaluate us, and call us wise? How do we measure up with the book of wisdom? What did Solomon say about father and mother? Becky? Yeah, verse 8. Chapter 1, verse 8. That makes a plea for wisdom. You might just, from chapter 1, verse 8, he begins to make the plea for wisdom. He talks about a wise man will hear and increase learning. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And now he makes the plea for wisdom. Hear the instruction of thy father. Forsake not the law of thy mother. And he introduces that with the two words, my son. And that's an expression that occurs several times throughout the pages of the Proverbs. You might underscore that. Be a good way to approach the book as well, what Solomon said to his son, or admonitions from a father to his son. My son. The first admonition would be, hear the instruction of thy father. The instruction of a father is to be what? To be heard. And that would go along with what we said in verse 5, a wise man will what? Will hear. And when it comes to the instruction of thy father, do you hear that? And hear in the sense of heed? And forsake not the law of thy mother. That's a good principle. Forsake not the law of thy mother. You ever, maybe something is said and you think, I remember that reminds me of something my mother told me. Or my father told me. There you go. Yeah. Happens from time to time, doesn't it? He said, they shall be a wad under thy head. What, Lila? A graceful ornament and chains about thy neck. Several times you'll see that, my son. He does that again in verse 10, doesn't he? My son. What are you to do if sinners entice you? Consent thou not. You might underscore those words. Consent thou not. There's a little song that says, don't consent to the evil. Don't consent to the evil. Just say no. Just say no. What, wasn't there a program geared toward young people? Just say no. Somebody, once the president's wives, wasn't it, that was behind that years ago, against drugs, drug policy. Mrs. Reagan started it. Just say no. It's a good program. I remember that when I was in school. They put that in our thinking. Just say no. And we need that when it comes to the enticement of sinners. There'll be those who'll entice us. So try to do what's wrong, what's evil. Walk in the way of a fool. They'll say, come with us. Come with us. What are you going to say? No. You know, there's some people we don't need to be with and some places we don't need to go. Right? Come with us. Well, where are you going? What are you going to be doing? And there's such a thing as guilt by what? Association. Well, I didn't do it. You were there. You were with them. You were one of them, right? Let us lay wait for blood. Let us lurk privily for the innocent without cause. Let us swallow them up alive as the grave, and whole as those that go down into the pit. We shall find all precious substance. We shall fill our houses with spoil. Come, or cast in thy lot among us. Let us all have one purse. And he says, walk not thou in the way with them. Refrain thy foot from their path. For their feet run to evil, and make haste to shed blood. Surely in vain the net is spread in the sight of any bird, and they lay wait for their own blood. They lurk privily for their own lives. So are the ways of everyone that is greedy of gain. He's talking about those who are greedy. They're like this, which taketh away the life of the owners thereof. Greed is what causes a person to steal, disrespect another's property. In fact, there's those who think nothing of taking somebody's life for their shoes. You know, you gotta be careful some places where you walk, what shoes you might have on. We were told that in parts of South America, if we were to go, that you ought not wear glasses or have a ring on your finger. That if you're walking down the street, they might just surround you and whack your finger off, take your ring. Yeah. Be bad business, wouldn't it? So I said, come, let's go do this. Consent thou not. Verse 20 begins a little section, the consequences of not hearing. And then he'll talk about in the latter part the blessings of hearing this plea for wisdom. Remember the plea? Verse 8. What's the consequences of not hearing? Remember, a wise man will hear and increase learning. And the plea is hear. What if I don't hear? What if I don't receive? I don't perceive. Remember those key words there at the beginning? To know, to perceive, to receive, to give, to understand. What if I just kind of disregard that? They go anyway. Learn the hard way. Yeah. You ever probably have think, I should have, I wish I had, or hadn't. Yeah. Or maybe you did something, you think, well, they told me about that. You ever think about that? Yeah. What are some of the consequences? Wisdom crieth without. She uttereth her voice in the street. She crieth in the chief place of concourse, in the openings of the gates, in the city. She uttereth her words, saying, How long, ye simple ones, will ye love simplicity? And the scorners delight in their scorning, and fools hate knowledge. Turn you at my reproof. Behold, I'll pour out my spirit unto you. I will make known my words unto you. This is wisdom speaking. Because I've called, and ye refused. See, I've stretched out my hand, and no man regarded. But ye have said it not, all my counsel, would none of my reproof. See, this is the man that will not hear, will not increase learning. I also will laugh at your calamity. I will mock when your fear cometh. When your fear cometh as desolation, and your destruction cometh as a whirlwind. When distress and anguish cometh upon you. Then shall they call upon me, but I will not not answer. That's one of the consequences, isn't it? The problem of no answer. God will not answer. They shall seek me early, but they shall not what? Find me. Why is that? Because they hated knowledge, did not choose the fear of the Lord. It's a choice, isn't it? That passage indicates that you're a creature of choice. You can choose to fear the Lord, or you can choose not to. You can choose to hear, or you can choose, as 1 and verse 7 says, to despise wisdom and instruction. They would none of my counsel. They despised all my reproof. Therefore, here's the consequences. Therefore, for this reason. It would be kindly, wouldn't it? They shall eat the fruit of their own way. That is the fruit of their doing. So what's another way of saying that? Reap what you sow. They're going to reap what they've sown. That's true, isn't it? Reap what you sow, you reap more than you sow, and you reap later than you sow. Those are principles about sowing and reaping that will not change, will they? They'll be filled with their own devices. For the turning away of the simple shall slay them, and the prosperity of fools shall destroy them. Here's the consequences. From verse 20 through 32, basically. See, he's appealed to us to hear, and he points out the consequences of not hearing, and then in verse 33, the blessings. What are the blessings? Whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely. That's kind of in contrast to what he said before, isn't it? How are they dwelling? Yeah. But, yeah, shall be quiet from fear of evil. Peaceful. Dwell safely and quietly. But in that section before, when he talked about the consequences, he talked about fear. Verse 26, I will mock when your fear cometh. Verse 27, when your fear cometh. And verse 27, distress and anguish cometh. That's not a very pleasant way to live, is it? To live in fear, to live in distress and anguish. That's the life of a fool, isn't it? That's the life of one who does not pay attention to what the Bible says, or despises what the Lord says. They won't receive wisdom. They're afraid. There's anguish. There's distress. But when you do what's right, when you receive and you perceive and you know and you understand and you apply, then you're dwelling safely. That's a big difference, isn't it? In how to live. Live safely. Quiet from fear of evil. You know, there are those who live in fear. Fear of what? God? Yeah. There's a I hear a siren. What are you laughing at, Keith? What are you thinking?
When you see, when you look up and you see the lights in the rear view, what's the wisdom?
There's a police officer. There's a police officer over there, and he's looking at me. Yep. Fear. The key to not living that way is what? Doing what's right. Then you don't have to worry about that, do you? Remember, sin introduced all that. Remember Adam and Eve back in the beginning? They were secure, all the peace until the devil came along and enticed. And instead of just saying no, she took of the fruit and ate and gave it to her husband, he ate. When they heard the voice of the Lord walking in the garden, they should have been at ease. But they were what? They were afraid. Hardship and the kind of life that it'll bring. Better to learn this when we're young, and put it into practice. Otherwise, we'll probably regret it more. The Lord gives wisdom. Somebody said, I'd like to have this wisdom. Where does it come from? It comes from the Lord. Didn't James talk about that? James 1, if any of you lack wisdom, let him what? Ask of God. That's where it comes from. God gives it. And we need to ask him. Remember Solomon? Ask what I shall give thee. Where's Solomon for that wisdom? Remember how it's described as the sand on the seashore. How did he get that? Where did it come from? It came from the Lord. He asked for it. The Lord gave it to him. The Lord giveth wisdom. That ought to be something that we ask for. Give me wisdom. Help me to know and to understand and to be wise, to apply thy word to my life. Out of his mouth cometh knowledge and understanding. You might jot down James 1:5 next to Proverbs 2:6. That's where James talks about, if any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God. God giveth out. To all men liberally, and upbraideth not, and it shall be given to him. But let him ask how. One of the conditions of asking God is ask in faith. If I ask God something, I really don't believe I'm going to receive it. I might as well not what? Don't ask for it. Got to ask in faith, not wavering. Otherwise, you're like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think he shall receive anything of the Lord. He layeth up sound wisdom for who? For the righteous. He is a buckler to them that walk uprightly. So if I want wisdom, I need to ask the Lord, and I need to live how? Righteously. Walk uprightly. Did you see anything in Proverbs 2 about the strange woman? He'll often talk about the strange woman. Proverbs 2:16, too. This would be another purpose, wouldn't it, of his writing? To deliver. To deliver thee. We might just put the word me there. Thee is me, and me is thee. From the strange woman. Well, who is that? Who's the strange woman? The immoral woman. You know, the foreign woman. The woman that you don't have a right to. Even from the stranger. Here he identifies who this is, doesn't he? Even from the stranger, which flattereth with her words. You might make a list of the characteristics of the strange woman, what she does. What did you learn about her from chapter 2? She what? Flatters with her words. What does that mean? Flatters. Okay. Somebody else? Speaks enticingly. It's excessive, insincere praise. Praises you. Makes you feel good about yourself. Yeah. Well, you look nice today. Funny words that flatter you. What else? For she flatters, she forsaketh. What's she forsaking? Whose is that, by the way? God. Forsaketh the guide of her youth. She's a forsaker. There's 3 F's, aren't there? Flattereth, forsaketh, and forgetteth. F stands for failure. And she's got 3 F's, doesn't she? She flattered, forsaking, and forgetting. What's she forgotten? The covenant of her God. What's that tell you about her? She's treacherous. What else? A sinner. The covenant of her God. Some have been under a marriage covenant. And be that as it may, she has shown herself to be disloyal to God's will, God's law. The covenant of her God. Her house inclines unto what? Death. Her paths unto the dead. None that go unto her return again, neither take they hold of the paths of life. And so the intent is to deliver thee from the strange woman. Verse 20 kind of goes in the direction that thou mayest walk in the way of good men and keep the paths of the righteous, which would indicate that if you go to her house, go unto her, take hold of her path, you're not going in the right direction. You need to walk in the way of good men, the righteous. The upright shall dwell in the land, and the perfect shall remain in it. But the wicked, as you contrast the wise, the upright, that is the righteous, versus the wicked. The upright, the righteous, will dwell. The wicked shall be what? Cut off. The wicked are those who would forsake and forget and go to her house, right? Those are the wicked. The upright are those who walk in the way of good men and keep the paths of the righteous. And the Bible says transgressors shall be rooted out of it. Proverbs 2. Chapters 1 and 2. What will keeping the commandments add to you? Michael? Yeah, chapter 3, 1 and 2. It's interesting, he talked about the strange woman that forgets, and then he appeals to, my son, forget not. Forget not my law. Remember. To forget not is to remember. But let thine heart keep my commandments. When you forget not, you'll keep, won't you? And when I keep, that's how I remember. How do I remember? How do I not forget? By keeping the commandments. If I don't keep the commandments, I'm going to forget. And when I become forgetful of God's law, I'm not going to keep the commandments. I don't know how many times, but time and again, from our study in the book of Genesis till now, emphasis has been placed on keeping the commandments, especially in the book of Deuteronomy. I don't know how many times. It'd be interesting to go back and add all of them up. Every time appeal was made to that. And here some of the blessings, the benefits of doing that. Length of days, long life, peace. Does that sound interesting? Sound appealing? Is that attractive to you? So I'd like to have a pill or something I could drink that would give me length of days, add years to my life. Well, here's a little secret, something you can do to add years to your life. Keep the Lord's commandments. Yeah, it might be a good way to start a little conversation with somebody. Hey, if you knew that there's something you could do that would make you live longer, they a lot of people won't say, take it one day at a time. I have enough today. Don't worry about tomorrow. Don't borrow sorrow from tomorrow. Tomorrow may not even come. Peace. Would you like to have peace? Just by keeping the commandments. Okay. Trust in the Lord with what? All thine heart. Lean not unto thine own understanding. It'd be good for us to learn. If I could learn that, I'd be better off than most people. What is health to your navel and marrow to your bones? Two things. Fear of the Lord and departing from evil. It's an interesting statement, isn't it? Health to your navel and marrow to your bones. Good health. I want to do something healthy. So I'm going to buy all natural. It has the word natural on it. I'm going to buy it and I'm going to eat it. One fellow did that in the paper where most people die of natural causes. What about the fear of the Lord? What about departing from evil? That's health to your navel and marrow to your bones. What are we to honor the Lord with? Our substance. What is that? Our possessions, what we have. Honor the Lord with our substance. How can we do that? What's one way we could do that, Richard? Okay. Upon the first day of the week, we lay by in store as God hath prospered us. We're honoring the Lord with our substance when we do that, aren't we? What else? Okay. Okay. But he still requires us to give, doesn't he? Okay. What about our time? We give our time? Our talents? It's important, isn't it? Absolutely. Appreciate you mentioning that. Practicing hospitality, sharing with others, helping a brother in need. When you have this world's good, you see your brother have need, and you help relieve that need. What are you doing with your substance? You're honoring the Lord, aren't you? Lots of ways to do that. Open your home. What are we not to despise? My son, remember that? 3:11. Despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as a father the son in whom he delighteth. Who is the happy man? Did you find him? Are you happy? One little girl asked her mom, said, Mom, are you happy? She said, yeah, I'm happy. She said, well, why don't you tell your face about it? Some people are that way, aren't they? Frown. Like they're thinking all the time. They sing that song, sing and be happy, and frown while they do it. We ought to be happy. Okay. And that would indicate we give what? The first fruits. Give the best. Like if you had a flock and you had the firstborn, what'd you do with that? That's the firstborn. Here's the best. That's what you give the Lord. Give the best. That's good. The Lord proved his people in the days of Noah. If you you can apply down in the direction. Trust in the Lord. Walk by faith, not by sight. It's a good little principle to get hold of, isn't it? Lots of application. What are we not to hold? Those to whom we have been doesn't it? Knots. Did you make a list of those? Forget not. What else? Michael. Let not. Forsake not. Be not. Devise not. See all those knots? Good little stuff. Yeah, some knots. Yeah, the wicked. What word do you associate with them? Curse. The just. Blessed. There's the difference. You got two groups of people, right? The wise and the foolish, the wicked and the just. The wicked are cursed, the just are blessed. You'll never. Surely he scorneth the scorners, but he giveth grace unto the lowly. What is the principal thing? Principle. What's that mean? A-L, not L. Principle. You know, it's important to the way of the wicked is as darkness. They know not at what they stumble. The path of the just, verse 18, is as the shining light. So there's a with all diligence. Underscore that word all diligence, all effort, all work. For out of it, this is the heart he's talking about right here. Out of it proceed what? The issues of life. Everything. Your heart is the very seat of life. That's where everything comes out of it. What you think, thinketh in his heart, so is he. What you say, where's that come from? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. What you do, everything stems from this right here. Whose responsibility? You keep mine. No more than I can keep yours. I've got to do that. And it's a daily responsibility, isn't it? Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. And this book will help me do that, won't it? It'll help me keep my heart. What's that? Being here to hear it. Glad you're here. Glad we're able to be together and have this exchange of information about wisdom. Anything you'd like to ask or say from these first few chapters? Anything you'd like to bring out that we've not mentioned? That'd be a good time. Appreciate you being here. We'll continue, Lord willing, Sunday. Lesson 2 from the Proverbs. The next 4 chapters. Thanks for your good.